I am the great horned owl. Some people call me the tiger of the sky. Julia's grandmother says I might even be a messenger from the stars. These days, stars are falling from the sky, and some people have the disappearing disease, including Julia's grandmother. Everyone wants stardust for its healing powers, but not Julia. She wants an actual healing star. Do you think she'll catch one? Let's find out as we read from The Healing Star by A. Kidd. We'll begin where Julia is on Blackberry Hill with her dog Petey, waiting for the star to fall so she can try to catch it. A strange popping sound startled Pete from his dream. He whimpered but then went back to sleep. Julia looked towards the sky. Something flickered. It could be an aircraft or maybe a UFO. She smiled as she thought of JG's mother and her wild theories about aliens. Another flicker, like a tiny light bulb flashing on a Christmas tree. She wanted to reach out and grab it, but she knew that's not how it worked. Was this the star she'd been waiting for? The star that would make Grandmoo well? She said a silent prayer to Asteria, goddess of falling stars, and then continued to watch and wait. Watch and wait. Watch and bam! The sound was loud like a firecracker or a gun. Julia peered into the bushes looking for signs of the catchers, but no one was there. It could have been the starting signal, but that would mean a falling star had already been sighted. Julia's heart hammered in her chest as she stared back up at the stars. A spark of light streaked across the sky like a lit match. She grabbed her gear and started running. Come on, Pete, Julia called as she flew down the hillside, the net waving behind her like a flag. She never took her eyes off the star. As she headed towards the field, a scattering of colored dots moved below, the catchers. She had to get there first. With maximum momentum on her side, she reached the bottom fast and nearly tumbled into the grass, but she flung her arms out like an airplane to keep her balance. Go, go, go! Whoops and hollers of excitement howled all around her. One boy and girl collided a few feet in front of her and then fell to the ground. To avoid the chaos and confusion, Julia veered right, still following the trail of smoke in the sky. This star was a whopper. She could tell by how fast it fell. The trail of smoke and dust particles fanned out behind it like the tail of a dragon, a real fireball. Julia's palms began to sweat. She still hadn't decided whether to use the gloves or the net. Where was Pete? She didn't have time to look. A lot of the catchers headed west as if anticipating that this firecracker of a star would launch itself all the way to the edge of the field. But Julia had a hunch, something her grandma used to tell her. She headed north, sprinting as fast as she could. The chilly air tickled Julia's nose, but the heat of her excitement warmed her. Her muscles ached as she forced them to work at a superhuman pace. She wanted to stop, but she knew she couldn't. An image of Grandmoo lying sick in bed popped in her head, propelling her forward. Come on, star. Drop! Drop! Finally, the star eased up. It was losing momentum now, dropping down like an elevator in a skyscraper. How many floors up was it? Julia guessed 50? She just had enough time to get under it. Luckily, no one was in her way. Shouts rang out in the distance. The catchers sensed their mistake. They were turning around. Somewhere a dog barked. Was that Pete? If the catchers caught up to him, they might kick him for sport, especially if he got in their way. She hoped the memory of his sharp teeth would keep them running while she continued to focus on the star. Just like catching a pop fly, she tried to convince herself. Her hands shook. She licked her upper lip. Was this what victory tasted like? Salty? She rubbed her hands together with excitement. This is for Grandmoo. Julia tried to ignore the shouts of other catchers heading in her direction. She checked the status of the star. Maybe 25 stories left. Time to prepare. She put on the gardening gloves, planning to catch it in her hands like Jacoby had done. Her hands shook. She looked right at the star, searching for answers. It hurtled towards her in a blaze of light and dust, temporarily blinding her. For a moment she looked away, spots continuing to dance in front of her eyes. Her courage began to burn out. What would Grandma do? Her grandma had always told her that stars cooled and hardened upon contact. The gardening gloves were made of nylon, which might melt given the strength of this star. What was the net made of? Think, Julia, think. Was it wool? Yes, sheared from Grandpa's very own sheep, and wool burned more slowly than nylon. Julia picked up the net and clutched it firmly, staring down the star. 10 stories left. Her eyes burned so much she almost needed sunglasses. The star was too bright. With only 5 stories left, she had to shut her eyes, but she quickly forced herself to squint. Squeezing the handle of the net, she wished harder than she'd ever wished before. Please let me catch the star. Please let me save Grandma. Wham! And that's where I'm going to leave it. Sometimes it takes a special wish to make your dreams come true. Bye.
Well, welcome back to the 2020 Virtual Authors Fair, hosted by Rochester Writers in the Rochester Hills Public Library. My name is Michael Dwyer, and we just got done seeing a video, an excerpt from her book. The author's name is A. Kidd. Hi, Angie. How are you?
Doing well. So, yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, it's great. Thanks for having me. So,
could you tell us a little bit about what we just saw?
Sure. So I was very excited to share this excerpt from my story with you. I didn't read from the first chapter, but I chose what I thought would be an exciting chapter, leaving it on a cliffhanger. So hopefully you'll be wondering what happens next. But for those of you who aren't familiar with the story, I can just give you a little summary of what the story is about. So basically, stars with healing powers are falling from the sky, and 4th grader Julia is trying to catch one to save her grandmother's life. Her grandmother has the invisibility illness, and eventually she will completely disappear. But if Julia can catch a star, her wish will be granted, and her grandmother will become well again.
Wow, that's an interesting story. You did leave me wanting more. So where do your stories come from? Where do the ideas of your stories come from?
You know, I've always been an idea person. I'm a runner, so I get a lot of ideas just running. And I've always been interested in the moon and stars, the night sky. And I've always just had questions about the universe, those big questions. And this story kind of came out of, some of those wonderings about what stars really are and, what they mean to us.
Well, now that you're no longer a child or a kid, much despite your pen name, do you remember back when you were young, and how has your memories or how has your internal feelings towards stars and the universe changed, and how has it turned into creative outlets now?
Well, I mean, I wanted to be an astronaut when I was a kid, and that dream kind of faded once I realized you have to spin around and all that. I get vertigo, so there was just no way I was going to be able to go through all that rigorous testing that they do. But then, this was kind of a way where I could still think about those things and imagine those things and feel some of those things without actually having to go up there. As a writer, as a creator, you get to make up these worlds and you get to ponder the questions and you get to feel like you're there. And then hopefully your audience, if you do it well, hopefully your audience feels that too. So we don't all need to be astronauts, but we can read these stories and maybe, feel like we're a part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great approach to it because, unfortunately, in a way, when we grow up, we lose some of that innocence of our childhood and those wonders that we had. And now we have to make sense of them now. And I think you're doing a great job with your debut novel, The Healing Star. Um, what else will readers find in there? Other sorts of remedies?
So, I mean, it is a fantasy story, and it's a little bit between, I would say, like magical realism or fairy tale. So there's definitely going to be some fun fantasy elements. Um, some people might compare it a little bit to like the Jack and the Beanstalk. I don't like to give too much away, but then there's also these serious topics that are broached about illness and dealing with a family member that is sick, and how how to come to terms with that. The ideas of hope. How do we find hope? Julia has to persevere. She tries all these different things to get the star, and not everything works out, but she keeps persevering. So there's kind of that sense. And what's interesting too is that with the whole pandemic and everything, there's a mystery illness in this story. And so I hope that readers will gain some sort of sense of hope about how you can come together as a community, even when you don't have all the answers.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, this year, despite all of the negatives that we've experienced, has lend itself to opening our eyes and our ears to different things around us and different ways of doing things. And maybe we'll be better off in the long run.
I hope so. Yeah.
So this is your debut novel. It's available now.
Yep. It's been out for about a year now, and it's available on Amazon, and copies can also be purchased from me as well.
What kind of feedback are you getting from readers?
So far, people seem to really like it. It's aimed at grades 3 to 6, but I've had some younger kids reading it with their parents or families, and even adults have been enjoying it. I think everybody can resonate with that idea of hope. And I mean, I'm sure most people have wished on stars at some point, even for the fun of it. So yeah, it's actually been resonating well with readers. So I'm happy about that.
And so since it's been, so far successful, it's off to a good start despite starting in a pandemic here. Is there a sequel or a second book on the horizon?
Well, it's funny you should say that. I wasn't actually planning for that, but I've gotten a lot of feedback that that people do want. Some of the kids wanted to hear more about the constellations, so maybe have a follow-up story with that, because they're kind of their own characters in a way. And my niece actually, she really liked Julia's dog Petey. She found him to be kind of a fun sidekick. He farts a lot. He's a beagle. She wanted him to have his own story. So I don't know if that part's actually going to happen, but if the readers want more, then I'm certainly willing to go down that road, or at least consider it.
Well, that'd be great. And you also consider yourself a performer. Can you tell us about how that came to be?
Well, I used to do performance poetry, so I would get up in front of an audience and share my poems. I did that mostly for adult audiences, so I'm not sure if I would do that, for kids or not. But it was such a great way to get immediate feedback, so that I could learn and grow, and it helped me to tell a story, because somehow performance poetry tends to lend itself to storytelling. So I really appreciated that experience. I think it's helped me as a writer. And then also, as a children's librarian, I've done storytelling because I did story times. So there's also that aspect.
Do you have any recommendations or tips for authors or new authors like yourself on how to break into the business?
Well, you definitely you definitely have to be willing to persevere because, as you probably know, it's not an easy business to break into. It takes a lot of patience and hard work. But most authors I know that stick with it eventually are able to make it. So if it's really your passion, don't give up on it. Um, and I would say just know that if you're committed to it, take some risks to try to put it out there because you will find an audience. If you put in the time and the effort, I truly believe you will find an audience. So it's worth it to um, and try different avenues. I would say nowadays, there's all different publishing avenues, and as long as you're professional about it, and again, do your homework, ask all the right questions. There's a lot of different avenues, so make sure you pursue all those avenues.
What do you find is the biggest thrill and the biggest challenge of being an author?
Well, I would say, I mean, I've always been a writer since like age 4. I was writing stories or telling stories to my mother, and she would write them down for me. So the writing itself is thrilling, but I would say actually being published now, it's connecting with people, especially kids. That was kind of the part that was missing for me because writing is such a lonely business. Maybe I would say that's the hardest part, is a lonely business. You're at your computer, and you don't know all the time what's working. So to be able to share it with people and hear their feedback and have them say, I've had kids say, how much they enjoyed it, how fun it was, or maybe it made them feel better. I've had parents say, that it helped them, even adults say that maybe it made them feel better. And those are the kinds of things that are just so gratifying, and I think that make all the work worthwhile.
I agree. I completely agree. Do you have a website or a place for people to go if should they want to find out more about you, A Kid, and your book, The Healing Star?
Yes, so they can go to my Facebook author page, which is a.kidwrites, and that's with 2 D's. And the same for my, if they would like to contact me, my email is the same. So it's a.kidwrites@gmail.com. And that would also be a way if someone was interested in like having a visit, like an author visit, or if they wanted a signed copy of the book, they could email me, and that would be a good way to reach me.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. How would you like to leave it with the audience?
I would like to say, I would like everyone to have hope in the future. And I suggest everyone keep making wishes, especially on stars.
Well, there you go. Keep wishing on the stars, and hopefully one will fall into your lap. A Kid is the author, and we'll have more authors in a few minutes right here on the 2020 Author Fair.
Thank you.